So, Leon, you've been playing Resident Evil Village for us, and after reading your review, one of the things that kind of stood out to me was like, you said that we've only seen about, 10 to 15% of the game? There is a lot more to explore, and what you've seen, if you like it, there is so much more to this game.
Yeah, it's one of the things I really, really like. Like it's, there's a whole chunk at the beginning I won't talk about because it's a massive spoiler. There's a really nice opening when you're in the forest and it's dark and it's setting everything up and it's really like atmospheric. And then, the whole sort of bit, you go through the village, you sort of meet, we go to Castle Demetrice, which is what we sort of seen in the demo, and that whole section plays out and it's really good. And then once you sort of leave the castle and finish that kind of opening moment, like there's basically none of it's been seen. We've seen like a little bit of Heisenberg's factory, like literally seconds, and there's a couple of clips of things that appear elsewhere. But yeah, most of the game is going to be a surprise, and that's kind of it's the thing that I quite like. I really enjoyed about it, just being sort of what's going to come next. Like there is a section early on that is genuinely one of my favorite horror sections I think I've ever played. It is absolutely exceptional.
After reading your review, one of the things that kind of stood out to me was like, it's a great game in parts, but then it's not necessarily the scariest horror game you've ever played. And then also some of the puzzles aren't exactly difficult, which are the kind of staples of the Resident Evil franchise. So did you still enjoy it considering those caveats?
Yeah, it's a fun game. It's got a really, really strong opening. There's it's really good at the beginning. There's there's sort of a second section area you visit that's absolutely incredible. It feels like it gets less good as it goes on, but it's still fun all the way through. Yeah, puzzles I thought were at no point you ever stop and go, I have to think about this. Like one of the puzzles literally has a solution stuck next to the buttons you need to press. What it sort of lacks in terms of like sort of really engaging puzzles and sort of scares, it is scary, like especially at the beginning. There's some great scares at the beginning of the game and in the opening, and there's a couple of really horrible good bits in a good way, but by the sort of second half of the game, it is just a monster shooting kind of frenzy.
From what we've seen so far, it didn't seem to be that much of a shooter. And yet from reading your review, later on as you get into the game, it seems to be a little bit more like Resi 5, where there is a lot more shooting action, is a lot larger part of it, which is quite interesting.
It's a very shooty game overall. Like it starts well. Basically what Capcom have shown off so far with the demo and the Castle demo is kind of the opening sort of chunk of the game. So Castle Demetrice is really nice. You're obviously running away from Lady Demetrice and her daughters. You meet these sort of ghouls in the basement, and they're kind of slow and lumbery, and they're quite nice and fun to sort of take on. You'll meet like a couple at a time, and you're backing away trying to sort of take them out. Later on it gets much more shooty. And it's much more kind of like Resident Evil 5 and like kind of Chris's campaign in Resident Evil 6, which was the much more sort of shooty section of that game. Lots of gunplay, lots of firing. There's a section quite close to the end where it's like an extended Lycan battle. It's like a very sort of furry Call of Duty. It's just lots of shooting for a long time. And it's like Resident Evil Resident Evil's combat is about kind of being outmatched and being scared and being sort of can I take this one thing on or these two things on, and this is very much kind of just pull the trigger until everything's dead.
So you've mentioned that this is one of the best horror bits that you've ever played in a game, but then other bits you've said are quite don't hit the mark and stuff.
I mentioned in the written review that like I almost kind of wanted to kind of like score the sections. It's like kind of 8, 9, 10, 7, 6. It's like it's never terrible, but some of the really good bits are really good, and then some of the okay bits are really okay. So you get this sort of quite inconsistent sort of experience, but yeah, like it's sort of very different from beat to beat. It almost feels like you're walking over visible lines in the game between sort of chunks that have been sort of, I don't know, had different kind of levels of treatment or had
different teams.
Yeah. And like I say, like one bit is absolutely exceptional, one bit is fine, like some bits are good. Like it's interesting to see like the sort of the fluctuation. This
is the first kind of foray into that open world hub area. Is this something that you've really enjoyed exploring and you'd like to see more of in Resi games?
Yes, it's weird because it is kind of classic Resi. Like if you played, like say, Resident Evil Remake recently, is you spend a long time in the police station, like going back and forth, like gradually opening up the police station. But it basically takes that template and puts it into a much larger area. You're consistently finding like a tool or a key or an object that suddenly makes a load of things on the map usable or of interest. And so it's nothing that Resi hasn't done before, but it's nice to see it in this kind of big open space, and you can spend a lot of time just sort of wandering around, and right towards the end of the game, I found like some things and I was like, oh holy shit, there's I wasn't expecting to find this much so late in the game. I spent a lot of time exploring both in some of the set piece areas and some of the special areas you can't return to. So I spent a lot of time poking around. The map turns blue if you're in a room. If the room's blue, you found everything that room has to offer. But there are definitely some bits of more fun than others. And as I mentioned with the exploring thing, I found all the things there were to find, and I clocked in about 13 hours playtime, which is kind of short-ish for a Resi game. I know someone who just played the objectives and just got straight through it, and they did it all in about 6 hours. So there's a lot of kind of variation depending on how you attack the open areas, how much you sort of want to complete.
There was a line in your review that I kind of thought summed up your experience, to correct me if I'm wrong, but you just said, what the hell is going on? And there seems to be this thing of what the hell is going on in relation to, I thought this was going to be a standard Resi game and it's more of a shooter. What the hell is going on in the sense of we've only seen 10% of the game, so also the highs and the lows. You said that you literally crossed a line, this feels like a different team's made this.
I want to kind of make clear, the low, it's not low as in a low, it's not as good as the previous bit, and it is. Well, the rumor was that this was a Revelations game that got upgraded and fast-tracked to become a sequel to Resident Evil 7. And having played it and completed it, I kind of believe it, because there's a lot of very Revelation-y feeling kind of bits to some of the bosses, some of the plot points, and it feels like they put a lot of effort into making the opening half of the game look amazing, possibly because I think a lot of developers know that people generally, the longer the game goes on, the less people are playing it. And then sort of the longer you go on, the more it feels like a Revelations game, which is also good, but it's a completely different tone to Resident Evil 7, which is I still think Resident Evil 7 is one of the greatest horror games ever made, and it did a lot of really interesting work to kind of reinvent Resident Evil 7. You had a small location, you had a small cast, it was very intimate slasher movie feel, and it felt like a reboot for the series as a whole. This is fun, but it feels like it kind of steps back over Resident Evil 7 a bit to get to kind of Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6 and the Revelation games, and do some of that sort of slightly more actiony, slightly more camp, sort of romp style Resi, where it's just a sort of a bit of a fun run around shooting monsters, silly characters. It's it's good, but
a little bit from here, a little bit from there, sprinkle of this, sprinkle of that. Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, so if you are interested in reading Leon's full review, or if you're interested in some guides, if you're playing the game at the moment and you want some tips and tricks and stuff to help you get further, how to make the best use of money and what weapons to get, we're going to have all of those guides on the website. So go and check out the website and like and subscribe below.